No matter what the artist tries to tell you, it's the citizens, not the jewelry. The Brutalist comes to us from A24M writer-director Brady Corbett, who did Von Lux and other projects, and was also written by Mona Fastvold, who did The World to Come, as well as Von Lux. In fact, I need to check out Von Lux because I never got around to it, and apparently it's gotten some pretty good reviews. That being said, this stars Adrien Brody as Laszlo Toth. Not to be confused with a man you may Google, not the guy that ended up defacing some property in Europe. I'll just say that much right there if you check that out. This has nothing to do with that man of the same name. This Laszlo is a brilliant architect who comes over from recent war-torn Europe where they're picking up the pieces, and oh boy, it is still really, really bad for people like Laszlo because he's Jewish. Yeah, there's quite a bit of a overhanging stuff about how Jewish people are still persecuted and seen as lesser than, well, normal humans, which is bullshit, by the way, just fucking bullshit, and the fact that it's still going on to this very day is fucking bullshit. That being said, though, Adrien Brody from The Pianist and various projects where he won an Oscar for The Pianist, and a lot of people thought, okay, that's going to be about the peak of his career. He peaked early, but nevertheless, he has come back with another fucking brilliant performance in The Brutalist. I'm going to talk about the plot here in a little bit, but my goddamn goodness, what an unbelievably layered and fucking brilliant performance. This movie doesn't live and die on his performance. There are other good performances as well, but Adrien Brody is one or two levels above so many other actors. It's absolutely fucking amazing just how brilliant this man is. Now, I'm not saying there aren't other brilliant actors, but to have The Pianist and now The Brutalist, he recently won a Golden Globe for his role in The Brutalist, and The Brutalist actually got some good attention at the Golden Globes. This got a lot of attention on the film festival circuit, and various people that were able to see it there had praised the fact that even though it is, yes, 3 hours and 35 minutes long with a 15-minute intermission about 100 minutes in. That's just a little bit of a warning for you. It does end up basically flying by. Really, this movie feels like it's maybe an hour or maybe even an hour and 20 minutes shorter because it just ends up captivating and drawing you in from the very beginning. So Adrien Brody can't do this alone, even though you could argue he did it alone in The Pianist. Actually, there were some other good performances there. That being said, he comes over and we see, brief stuff about how he's coming over on the ship and he's kind of banged up and everything. And he arrives in New York City. And then we see a little bit about how, he gets ingratiated into the culture. He ends up getting a job with his cousin. And for reasons I'll explain a little bit later on, that doesn't necessarily work out. But then he gets the opportunity of a lifetime because of Harrison Lee Van Buren. That is a really, really large, throbbing name to talk about, actually, and mention that is, played by Guy Pearce, who is in top-tier, very, very unsettling form. And the whole thing is Laszlo is doing this because he wants to bring his wife, played by the incredibly talented and incredibly gorgeous Felicity Jones, along with their niece, played by Rafi Cassidy, who was the little girl in Tomorrowland. Yeah, that's a little bit surprising. Because you can see it, but you're just like, Tomorrowland only came out a few years ago, and you're like, okay, look at her. You can tell it's the same person, but it's just amazing how time flies by in just a few years. I do have to praise her performance as well. She did a very good job as the niece, Sophia, as it were. If I mispronounce some of these character names, I do apologize. I am not up on my Jewish pronunciations, in case you did not fucking understand that. And in case you didn't know that from the channel, I still try to do my best. But The Brutalist does tell Laszlo's story and the people around him and stuff like that. And what I really, really liked about this was that it takes its time. It has two parts. The first part is the enigma of arrival from 1947 to 1952. We see him arrive, raise hell and leave like Steve Austin. No, he ends up arriving, ends up getting ingratiated with the Van Burens, but then for reasons that we will talk about, or by we I mean me, we'll talk about, things get a little bit sidetracked. But then 100 minutes in, we get to part 2, and that is A Hardcore Beauty from 1953 and 1960. And what I like about this is it takes its time. It takes its time, it tells a story. There are only a couple things that I have issue with, that I take a little bit of issue with, that will not downgrade this movie at all. But as brilliant as this is, as much as it flies by, as much detail as there is, it doesn't just rest on certain things while taking his time. But I feel like in the last 40 or so minutes, because I feel like the first part's actually the best part. The second part is very, very good. Do not misunderstand me. But I feel that the last 40 or so minutes, and it feels like a bunch of stuff happens, and it feels like there's not a full resolution for a couple of those things. Like there are some parts where I'm like, okay, well that makes sense as to why they did that, but well, they just kind of left that over there. Why are we leaving that over there? I mean, I don't necessarily understand, but nevertheless, it is brilliantly shot. It is captivating to look at. This is an incredible film to experience in theaters. Now, I can see a lot of people waiting to see this on streaming, but the simple fact that films like this, at this length, with Brady sticking to his guns, A24 willing to take a chance on it, and Adrien Brody delivering a fucking amazing... To think, The Pianist came out, and I hate to go back to that, they came out like, what, 2001, 2? I think it was 2002. The fact that he is turning in another performance like that 22-something years later is brilliant. This movie is quantified as a 2024 release and was on the best list of a lot of people, a lot of film critics and everything that were able to see it. And a lot of people like myself were able to see were able to only see it just recently when it got a wider release. So it's going to be on the best list of a lot of film buffs like myself that decided that they, wanted to finally check it out. It's going to be on the best list for 2025, and it's just really, really amazing to watch. And there are some very jarring moments here. There are racial slurs that I will not fucking repeat here, and please, if you have seen the movie, do not repeat them here, but man, it is insane just how much they pack into this. But again, the aforementioned stuff about the second part where it just feels like they could have, I'm not even saying fully explained stuff, but it just feels like they left some things by the wayside, and I don't quite get it with how great the first half was. But that being said, that doesn't downgrade how incredible this movie is, how incredibly captivating it is, how great Adrien Brody is. Felicity Jones, when she finally shows up, because she doesn't show up for a bit, but when she does, she's almost unrecognizable, and I mean that in the best way possible, because she's still... captivating to listen to, captivating to look at, but she does have, a particular part of her character that makes it to where she needs to come in a little bit later on, and Adrien Brody is by no means he's a great actor, don't get me wrong, but playing Laszlo, he is a very layered and very flawed character. There are a lot of flaws to him. There's also the idea of the intoxication and the madness and the sadness of this particular country for people that just got over here. And again, how people are persecuted and stuff like that. I do want to shout Isaac de Boykel, I think is how you say his name, or Brokel. He was great as Gordon. Thought I would love to see a fucking spin-off of his character, because I was actually really fascinated about him. And again, unlike Killers of the Flower Moon, this was a film that took its time but also didn't beat you over the head with stuff. It allowed you to basically experience the film and these characters and just enjoy the building, and the ending of it in particular, even though I have my issues with a few things they did in the last 40 to, maybe even 50 minutes, it still was so goddamn good and so captivating. And the final line of this goddamn movie will stick with you. And if you've seen the movie, you know what it is. But it's great. Adrien Brody delivers a magnificent goddamn performance. I could not fucking believe how great this was. And it does fly by. Now, again, one thing I do want to warn you guys is maybe don't snack before the movie. Take a bathroom break during the intermission, depending on the size of your bladder. So if I got to see it in IMAX or see it in an equivalent, RPX or whatever Lowe's has, Lowe's, AMC, Cinemark, whatever it is. We have a few IMAX screens around here. The closest one is actually 40 miles away, and I drove to that theater, same theater I saw The Last Showgirl in, Complex, not the IMAX one. That would have been weird. I fucking love The Brutalist. It's going to be in my top 10 easily for 2025. If it's not even in the top 5. If it's not even the best. I may have already found the best movie of the year, but we'll see. That being said, though, fucking brilliant. I'm going to talk about some spoilers. I'm going to leave some stuff by the wayside just because there is quite a bit to unpack. But yeah, it's in theaters if you want to check it out. Great performances all around. Brilliantly filmed. Heart-wrenching. One part that really jarred me where it actually made sense given the line that a particular character said a little bit earlier on that they repeated later. Anyway, 3, 2, 1, spoilers. So, we see Adrien Brody arrive. He gets with his, he gets a job at his cousin's furniture shop, along with his wife. His cousin's wife, that is. And his cousin's kind of like, been taken in by the American way and stuff like that. So, even though he's helping design some stuff, things aren't going all that well. Then they get an offer from Van Buren. Harry Lee Van Buren, Joel Alwyn, who is great. Great as a sleazeball. The guy right there, Maggie Lee, Stacey Martin, is very good as well. And what I like about this is when they set up the whole thing of, him working with his cousin, they are going to completely redesign this, study, this library and stuff like that, and take the curtains down, make these, these cabinets or these shelves that go from like this to this. They just open like that. They just, giant panels. And it is massive. It's like these rooms were made for fucking giants. Not they might be giants. They were fucking giants to stand there. But Harry kind of leads them on a goddamn, escapade as it were. Things don't go all that well. Because now, after they complete all this work, Guy Pearce's Harrison arrives. He's pissed because his mother was dying. He was all upset. And, the idea was they're not going to pay. Well, now because of that kind of ends up putting a thing between the cousin and Laszlo while he is dealing with some other stuff, such as a drug addiction. He gets addicted to opioids or opium, stuff like that, and, injecting and everything, even stuff like that, which I'm like, they showed some needles and, it's not about me. I don't like needles. I don't like needles at all. I can stand a whole bunch of stuff in horror, but no. But I get it. But it made sense. And it shows how flawed brilliant people can be. It shows how flawed anybody can be, but especially somebody as brilliant as Laszlo. And I thought they were actually going to make this kind of like the story of the guy that designed, the Polish guy that designed the Dorton Arena in North Carolina or South Carolina. It's one of the two. The one that was referenced in When Giants Walked here, the Jim Crockett promotion stuff that they did on PBS. That being said, it wasn't like that, but I thought they were going to go that route at some point. But Laszlo has a friend, Gordon, who has a son. There is one point where they're waiting in line at a kitchen line. And because of, supplies and everything, but likely because of their race or, their beliefs, they were turned back. But then, Laszlo takes a liking to him and says, what I'm going to do is you let your son sleep in. I'm going to take care of this. Because he's still working for his cousin. And then when that stuff doesn't work, the wife kind of makes an implication that Laszlo hit on her, which wasn't the case. They just wanted to get him the fuck out of there because he's not like they are and everything. And that, Laszlo didn't stick up for himself and now they're on the hook for all this money. And it was a lot of money back then. But then, after living in a shelter, still being addicted to opioids or opium and stuff like that, Laszlo ends up landing a job, shoveling coal, this kind of stuff. And then Harrison shows back up. And Harrison ended up saying during a chat over breakfast, but he was only able to have coffee because the scene didn't take forever, but also Laszlo needed to get back to work. He loved the architecture. He said, I'm sorry, my mother passed away. I was in shock. All this stuff. But your designs, that he did in Budapest, because that's where he came from. He was a Budapest architect. They still live on. Even with the war-torn stuff and all that. Like, this stuff lives on in magazines and stuff like that. These designs live on. And Harrison wants a proposition having him, help him with some stuff or whatever. And he says, I find our conversations intellectually stimulating. And boy, does that line come back to haunt. Ooh. But throughout part one, this idea is that Harrison takes a liking to him, brings him to the property, has him stay in the guest house, and the daughter is actually really nice. Harry, you can tell, is a fucking sleazeball. Again, Joel Alwyn playing a great role here, and they end up, it ends up with this idea that basically Harrison wants Laszlo to do this architecture and build this grand complex, so to speak, as a monument to the memory of his late mother on this hill. And Doylestown, I think is what it's called. They're not necessarily, totally thrilled with it, but because the Van Burens are rich, they can get away with that shit. So the idea is to have a church basically that can be converted into an auditorium if necessary, but also a library. Also this grand stuff, and it's going to be $850,000. That's what the budget is. Now, this was in the 1950s, so that would be almost $1 million. I actually had a buddy do the inflation calculator thing because I didn't have time to do it because I was watching the goddamn movie. But I asked him during the intermission if that, what that would be. Now, eventually, after writing letters to his wife and stuff like that, he does eventually get his wife over there. There actually is this one really brilliant scene a little bit earlier on where his cousin, or somebody greets him. I think it is his cousin that greets him. The cousin that kicks him out of the whole thing because his cousin was a dick. It tells him, I heard about, I got a letter. Your wife is alive. Your wife and your niece are alive. So after talking to her and everything, eventually she does arrive. But because of famine and because of other stuff, she has weak bones, a weak body. Felicity Jones is in a wheelchair. That kind of leads to where she's not sure if he'll still love her. He's also been kind of sleeping around and also still has the opioid or the opium addiction. But he gets Gordon to help him out because Gordon helped out with the stuff before with the study. There are certain... The full-blown N-word isn't used, but enough of it is used with disdain by Guy Pearce, who is fucking brilliant in this, I have to say, again. To where it's oh, that was kind of, But, nevertheless, the idea is they're going to build this, big old complex. And Laszlo gets to work. Design something where there's going to be a particular time, noon, where there's going to be this partition in the middle where it'll beam down on this particular thing where a cross will be shown. Now, he is Jewish. He's practicing Judaism. But he was I thought this was supposed to be a center for all people. The idea, converting people to Christianity, getting rid of other religions. There's a lot of stuff bubbling up about the Van Buren. Not necessarily the daughter. I don't think the daughter actually really means anything bad. But definitely Harrison and Harry, yeah. They're really... and by the way, Azabeth, I'm just going to say Elizabeth because it's just a lot easier. Felicity Jones's character. She's still nervous. She wanted to be with him, but she feels that he doesn't love her. To be fair, he does love her, but he's also been taken in by a lot of this stuff. And so he's kind of torn between what he left behind, what he has now, and what he's had for the last 5 or so years. So then we get to part 2, wife arrives and stuff like that. By the way, the Hardcore Beauty for 1953 to 1960. And before he actually fully gets the job, he does say to Gordon, and it's a really, really good line, I do not permit my people to see me as a beggar. Never. Too proud. And even as costs pile up with this great grand complex, we end up hearing from Laszlo, he waives, the rest of his fee. He has some money. He's willing to help people out, but oh boy. But right after Felicity Jones arrives, and this bothered me, and I don't know if it bothered other people, but it was just so fucking brilliant. And Guy Pearce just had this just brilliant look on his face. Where he ends up flicking a coin at him. Oh, could you pick that up for me? The quarter thing with Jewish people. leading to stuff that Jewish people have heard, that I've heard, not just reference in wrestling promos, but the people who told me, pick it up, boy. I'm not going to, pick it up, Jew boy, is what they basically say. Them, not me. But my, oh my. Now, his drug addiction continues to take grip. Gordon ends up kicking it. He has a son. And they're building this stuff and it's going well, but then a supply train ends up getting blown, just ends up blowing up. So that puts a hamper on that because 2 trained people are in the goddamn hospital. That puts the project on ice. A little bit earlier, Harrison had offered to get Felicity Jones a job in New York using her education, studying English and everything and writing at Oxford to come to, to basically get a job in New York. And you will almost think, he's trying to separate him because now he doesn't have Laszlo to himself. More on that in a bit. It's all about power is what it is. Laszlo, despite his flaws, is a very giving guy and wants to make sure his niece is okay and his wife is okay. So, more often than not, his addiction is, he's able to control it, but then eventually it does get really, really out of control. Where finances and stuff like that, and even though he comes back to the project, and he had been working in New York, and Harrison had a lawyer friend named Michael, who actually, that actor, really, really good job, did not write his name down, really good. Not necessarily even a supporting role, because he only has a few scenes, but he does pull it off quite a bit. Brings it back, the project is back on, because the insurance settlement and all that stuff with the people that got hurt or died or whatever it is. So now everything's being built. And this is a monolithic fucking building. It's amazing, but it's monolithic. It's made out of concrete and all that stuff and everything and all these materials. And then the offer is made to go to Italy, where there's a guy, Orazio, nevertheless, an old friend. And then Guy Pearce decides to say something that's like, it's Italians are the of Europe. That got a chuckle out of the audience, I think, because we were just uncomfortable with the, Jared, we're just going to say that. Nevertheless, they go up into these mountains, these marble mountains, and the idea is to get this piece of stone. It's like marble type stuff. It's amazing. You can pour water on it, it just shines. And then they're going to have a party. Because he's an old friend and stuff like that, and Harrison is there, and I don't know how in the world I've gone this long without talking about this scene. But Laszlo's dancing with a woman, a very attractive woman, I do want to say, very attractive. She'd be hard to resist, but because he's also still on drugs and also needs his fix and stuff like that, Van Buren ends up finding him and he's got a needle in his arm and this kind of stuff. And then the scene comes where he basically just treats him like his slave. He treats him like a lady of the eve. He R's him. Yeah. And I find our conversations intellectually stimulating. And I guess I probably should have guessed that maybe there's a chance that Guy Pearce is just pushing off the whole thing, and why him and his wife separate is possibly because he's gay, or by whatever it is. I won't judge if people have whatever your sexuality is. You take advantage of somebody, though, yeah, kind of a dickish thing to do, but he does that, but then plays it off like, oh, you were on a drug binge and your friend had to take you to that thing and to bed, and we got to get back to this kind of stuff. But then, all this time, his wife has osteoporosis and needs her medicine and stuff like that. And Sophia ends up she ends up basically medicating her and stuff like that. But then we flash forward a few years later, and they're living in New York or some weird area. There was this funny stuff about this old footage of this stock footage of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania steel and various other things. And I do also want to shout out the opening credits. Let's just move across it's almost fucking psycho. Great job by Brady. But her medication is basically run out. he ends up getting his opioid stuff and ends up helping her. But the dosage that he has is for him, not her. She ends up almost dying. Now, they do end up having a torrid night of sex while high on all that. And then she almost dies in the hospital. But then he ends up telling her something that happened. So she has recovered enough. She's been in a wheelchair for a while. She's recovered enough to where she actually is on a walker. Goes to the Van Buren's place. And basically interrupts a dinner, a meeting, a business meeting, dinner, whatever the fuck it is. And ends up basically telling, Harrison what he did. Like, you will confess to what you did. Harry's upset and basically pushes her down. The daughter tries to do something nice, realizing, is this true? Is this true? I need to help this lady that was actually really nice to us and everything we've been nice to. But yeah, Harry even a little bit earlier said, we tolerate you, Laszlo. Again, just implied that they're lower when they're not. They're people. But nevertheless, this is where things get a little bit weird. Because Van Buren just disappears. People are going to look for him. We don't know if he ended up taking his own life in the church, taking his own life in the woods. We don't know if he burst into flames. I mean, he's just gone. And then, basically, Zofia was going to go back with her significant other to Jerusalem a little bit earlier. And all this time, Felicity Jones has felt very alone. She ends up deciding she wants to actually go back with. And after all this stuff goes on, we then smash cut to 1980 Italy, where basically Laszlo is now in a wheelchair. His niece is pushing him around. And she presents a whole bunch of his architecture and stuff going back to Budapest in the 30s, stuff in Connecticut, a synagogue, First Episcopal Church, easy for me to say. But even that monolithic, design of, what he did in memory of Harrison's mother, Van Buren's mother, doing all that and everything and all his designs. And that's where the line came. No matter what the artist tells you, it's the citizens, not the jewelry. And that hits like a fucking ton of bricks because you realize how, despite his flaws, he was very flawed. He shouldn't cheat on his wife, shouldn't have definitely done drugs, all that. But he was a brilliant designer. Fictitious or not, brilliant designer. Based on certain, people, I imagine, certain designs. It's a fucking brilliant movie just because of all it builds up to. Again, I just kind of wish with the second half, we would have had a few more things explained, especially in the latter little bit. It just feels like it just does this and then suddenly sprints to the goddamn finish. So I really, really liked it. I really liked it, and it's fucking brilliant. It's an incredible movie, and A24 knocked it out of the park here with their idea to pick it up for distribution. Adrien Brody was magnificent. Guy Pearce, absolutely, further proving that he deserved all that attention he got from Memento. And then other projects that he's done. He did a project called Sunrise last year. That came out last year that was absolutely dog shit. But Guy Pearce is a brilliant goddamn actor. And other people do very good as well. It gets an A+. It's really, really good. I don't know why I went on so long about it, but it's just really, really captivating. So nevertheless, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Rethlin. I'll see you soon.